Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another Sims 4 speedbuilding video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building in the world of Tartosa, which is the world that we got from the game pack The Sims 4 My Wedding Stories, and I'm going to be building a Mediterranean but then also Italian inspired villa. So first of all, how is everyone? I feel like I haven't spoken to you in such a long time, because, well, it feels like a long time for me anyway, because just in case you missed it, last week I didn't upload because I was poorly, because unfortunately I had Miss Rona, which was very unpleasant, and then the previous two videos before that were pre-recorded because I went on holiday. So I feel like I haven't sat down and actually done a voiceover and sat down and spoken to you in a really long time, and so I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you've been taking care of yourself. There has been so much that we need to catch up on in terms of, we're getting a new expansion pack literally next week and I haven't even spoken about it. The last voiceover I did was a family farm in the world of Henfield and Bagley, and I said in that voiceover, I bet the one time I go on holiday and I don't do my voiceover on the day, there's going to be an announcement of something and everyone knows that there's something happening and I ain't got a clue, and that was pretty much the case. I was on holiday and, you know, we got a trailer for the new expansion pack. To be fair, the trailer actually came out just before I went, but then everything else afterwards I was on holiday for, so I came home and I had so much to catch up on. But we're getting The Sims 4 high school years next week, which is so exciting, and of course I'm going to do a build using all the new build and buy items. I haven't taken too much of a dive into, you know, early access content because I kind of want to save it for myself. I have watched the Sims live stream, and from what I've seen so far, I'm so excited about it. But yeah, anyway, getting on and actually talking about this video. So this week, because I was on holiday, I wanted to build something kind of inspired by my trip. And also, if you're not aware, the previous week in the UK, we've had a severe heat wave, right? And it has been so hot, and I just wanted to build something that would kind of match the temperature of England. And so I decided to build this Mediterranean, also kind of Italian villa. Now I'm saying Mediterranean and Italian just because I didn't set off with like an initial goal of, right, I want to build a Mediterranean house, or right, I want to build a Tuscan villa or something like that. I just kind of set off and wanted to build something that, like I said, would match the temperature that the UK was in last week, because I don't know what it is as well, and I don't know if anyone else finds this. I find it when I play The Sims, like actual gameplay, if I'm really hot, my Sims, if they're wearing something that's, you know, like lots of coats and scarves and hats and stuff, I can't deal with it because I'm myself, I'm boiling, and I can't. So when it comes to building, it's kind of like the same thing, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And so I just wanted to build something that was a little bit Tuscan inspired, a little bit Mediterranean. It's kind of like a happy hybrid between the two of them, basically. So the house ends up being a 1-bedroom and 1-bathroom house, which honestly, can't remember the last time I sat down and I built something that was just for a couple or a single sim, because the majority of the time I seem to build family homes, because a lot of people like to play with families, you know, they like to have lots of generations going on. Maybe you've got like a legacy family, or a lot of people just like having multiple bedrooms in a house in case, you know, your sim falls pregnant. What about if you're doing the 100 baby challenge, something like that. So I normally tend to build family homes. Plus also with family homes you get to decorate more bedrooms, and you get to do, you know, like a toddler's room and a child's room and the teenagers' rooms, and you can kind of change the bedrooms depending on the Sims' personalities, which I just really like doing. Which actually, going back to the expansion pack, I'm so excited to get my hands on some more teenage build and buy, like for their bedrooms, because I feel like currently at the minute we are quite lacking in the bed department, more so than anything for teenagers. I just find that sometimes a teenager's room is either going to be super formal and it's going to be a teenager, you know, that's got their life together and they're maybe like really preppy in school and they get really good grades, or the complete opposite where I just give them a completely black bed, like black bed frame, black bedding, and then I'm just like, okay, maybe they're like a musician, or maybe they're someone that's really into like heavy metal music or something like that. I don't know, I just feel like the bed options that we currently have in the game are quite lacking for teenagers. And so I'm first of all excited for the beds, second of all excited for everything else that comes in it. Like I said, I don't really know too much, I haven't really watched too much Game Changers content. I never really do. Whenever it comes around to a new pack release, I like to kind of reserve it for myself, because I like discovering things myself in the game, and I also love it when we get a new game pack or whatever it is and we have a good build and buy, and I sit down for the first time and I just pull absolutely everything out, I go through the swatches in my own time, at my own pace. I'm really excited to do that next week. But something that we're getting in the expansion pack as well, which looks quite similar to something that I've done in this build, which by the way was not intentional, but it just happened to look quite similar. But it's this area over here on the left hand side. Basically, in the expansion pack, we're getting this new item, which is, I think it's called a trellis. I am not familiar with that word, so hopefully I said that right. But basically, it's a wall decoration that you can put on the side of your Sims houses. And you know the ladders that we've got in the game? Basically, a ladder can clip inside of it. And then if your Sims, say for instance, you've got a balcony or you've got a little area outside your Sims window, if you place down at this wall trellis and then the ladder, your Sims can then climb down it, but then it's not so obvious that there's a ladder there. It's kind of like hidden. So in that way, say if you've got a teenager that's been really naughty, they're grounded or whatever, they, I don't know, they've got bad grades, or they're just something that they did really upset their parents, and then they're grounded. Say if they wanted to go out on a Friday night and they wanted to sneak out the house, if you've got this wall trellis and then this ladder merged into the house, your Sims can first of all open up the window, which I can't believe we're actually getting this ability in The Sims 4. Basically, there's this new window that's coming in the expansion pack, and your Sims can open it and climb out of it and basically use it as a door. The one thing that I am a little bit wary of, though, with this new window is I hope that when we get future windows, like future windows in expansion packs or game packs or however they're being delivered, I hope that these new windows that we also are going to be getting will also have this ability, because I love this idea of your Sims being able to climb out the window and sneak out and go and have a party with their mates on a Friday night, but also on the same token, I don't want to be limited to this one window, because I feel like I'm just going to use it all the time, just because your Sims can use it and sneak out and stuff. So I hope that maybe if we ever get some more windows from like future expansion packs or something, they also update it to have that feature. But I'm just so excited that we're getting that. Honestly, would have never thought that in The Sims 4 your Sims are going to be able to climb out the window and then go down a trellis and then go off to prom or a party or wherever they're going. But yeah, with this new trellis piece, basically I created something in this build which looks a little bit similar to it, and like I said, it wasn't intentional, but basically I wanted there to be a bit of a fenced-in carport in this house, but the way that I wanted it to look, we didn't have any fences that were kind of the idea that I was going for in the game, and so basically I decided to create my own. I use these wall decoration pieces that are from Eco Lifestyle, and I put them onto a wall to start off with, just so I can kind of get the correct placement and the correct height of them. And then once I was happy with the placement, I removed the wall, and then using the tool mod, I then elevated them down into the ground, so now it looks like this is the fence. I did it on both sides of the house. You can see that I'm also doing it over here. And then I just cluttered it up with loads of different wisteria and ivy and just loads of different nature, basically, and just tried to make it look a little bit overgrown. And I'm so happy with the way this turned out. I also use this archway, which doesn't really get much use in my game. It's from their Courtyard Oasis Kit, and it's normally meant to be on the medium wall height. But you can see as this house is on a foundation, where it's leveled up, if you place down a medium wall, like door or window or something, it will be to the same height, if that makes any sense. Basically, I use this archway as well, which is from the Courtyard Oasis Kit, and it just tops it off, and I'm just really happy. But another thing that I'm really happy about with this build, I mean, I'm really happy with the whole entire build, and I'm really proud of it, but something that I was especially proud of in this build was I tried to make it look like from the front of the house, this house has a cellar. Well, I mean, in the end, there ends up being a wine cellar, which you will see me build. So there is a basement in this house. I don't want to say spoiler alert, because it's not really a spoiler, but spoiler alert, there's a basement, and your Sims can go down there, and there's this big room that's filled with like all these wine bottles. There's also a little bar down there. There's loads of different barrels, and there's also a separate little room which I imagine your Sims can make wine in. Now, unfortunately, in The Sims 4, we don't have the ability to get our Sims to actually make wine. It's not The Sims 3 World of Adventures. That was an amazing ability, because basically, if you had The Sims 3, if you got your Sims to travel to Paris with The Sims 3 World of Adventures, they could basically go to this place and they can make wine themselves by like jumping on the grapes, and then afterwards they could buy the same kind of like object, take it home, and basically your Sims in The Sims 3 could make their own wine. Unfortunately, in The Sims 4, that's not really something that we can do, and so I tried to do the next best thing, which was use the juice maker machine, which we got from the Eco Lifestyle expansion pack. And basically there's like a little separate room in the basement as well, where I imagine your Sims will make all the wine and stuff. I have forgotten to mention up until this point, and I've now just realised, I forgot to tell you that this is going to be for my save file, and I've got quite an in-depth, quite an interesting backstory for the Sims that are going to be living here in my save file, which I will talk about in just a minute. But yeah, this is going to be for my save. Sorry, I got so carried away talking about the expansion pack and just all the new exciting things. Like I said, it's been a while since I've sat down and I've spoken to you, so I feel like we've got a lot to catch up on. But yeah, there is a basement in this house, and I kind of wanted to showcase it from the front, like looking at it from street view. And so because we don't have any cellar doors in The Sims 4, I decided to basically make my own. Now, you would have seen how I did it, because I wanted to make sure to keep in all the footage, just in case you wanted to do something similar in your own game. Basically, the way that I did it is I got some doors, placed them down normally on a normal wall. I then removed the wall and then rotated them so they were at an angle. I then lowered them into the ground, and then using these chopping boards, funny enough, that we got from the Cool Kitchen Stuff Pack, I used them as kind of like the edge of the door and also kind of like the back of the door, basically to make it look like it was covering up almost like the cellar entrance, or covering up the hole in the ground that then leads into the basement. I was so happy, and I'm so happy with it. I am so happy with the way it's turned out, because I don't think I've never thought of this before. I was really proud of it. And so, yeah, I think I might do this in some future builds, but you can see it, what I'm talking about, just in the front now, as I've like moved back round to the front of the house. But it just looks so good as well. The doors that I've used are from Cottage Living, and they just look like a cellar door. They look a little bit old, they look a little bit worn down. They're just perfect fit for this house. I really wanted it to feel like it was this really old house, kind of secluded in the countryside of Tartosa. It's at the top of the cliff, you know, it's by itself, it's got no neighbours, and the Sims that live here, they like it that way, you know. They're not that social. Well, I say actually, one of them is sociable, the other one's not that sociable, and so it's kind of like the perfect fit for them. But yeah, I'm just so happy the way it turned out. But getting on and quickly talking about the landscaping. Now, you wouldn't have seen it, but you see that I've put these trees onto the foundation. I don't think I show it, but I do end up placing down a pot. So if you're looking at them trees, I place down onto the upstairs like balcony area, and you're thinking, how is that even possible? There's no pot. I do end up placing a pot. I do just want to mention it though, because I did cut out the footage of the majority of the back garden landscaping, which is something that I don't really like doing that often. But the thing is, this house, so just to give you an idea if you're wondering, because I like to mention it sometimes, because sometimes people ask me, and you know, sometimes people are curious. The whole build itself, like with the outside and the inside and everything in between, the build took me around about 7.5 hours to film. And then once I edited it and sped it up, just the pure footage of just the exterior sped up without any inside furnishings, without just literally me landscaping pretty much and placing down like fence pieces and ivy and all the small little details. That was 25 minutes worth of footage just in this one video, and I just thought that was a bit too much. Like I said, normally I don't like to cut out too much, but I just felt like it was a bit too 25 minutes for a 30 by 20 just of the exterior. It's a bit excessive, and so hopefully you don't mind. As a one-off, I did decide to cut it out, but you will see it as I go in to the back garden. I kind of like landscape little tiny areas and then also furnish some areas, so you will see the back garden. But in terms of actually physically placing down the trees and the bushes and all the flowers, you won't see me do it. But I placed down at them pots for them tall trees on the foundation when I was doing the back garden, because there's also a similar thing in the back garden. And so yeah, I did just want to mention it, just because I know that if I was watching this video myself, I'd be looking at them thinking, that's not very realistic. How are you gonna, like, they're not gonna be coming out of the foundation. There ends up being a pot, so just in case you're wondering. But anyway, moving on and getting on and actually talking about the Sims that are going to be living in this house for my save file. So the household consists of 2 Sims. I was personally imagining a husband and a wife, and they just live here, just them 2. They haven't got any children. They've got 2 cats, so they've got 2 fur babies. But in terms of children, it's just not on the cards for them. It's just not what they want in life. They're just happy, just being a married couple, just living their best life up in the hills of Tartosa. Now, the way that I did the backstory is I kind of focused on the wife first, kind of like developed their backstory, developed their storyline, and you know, what they like to do, their hobbies, their kind of like character values, if you want to put it that way. And then once I was at a happy place with their backstory, I then went on and started brainstorming for the husband. So I'll talk about the wife first. So the wife has lived in Tartosa the majority of her life. I was thinking that she comes from a really big family, and in my save file she'll be having like cousins and aunts and uncles and lots of relatives in and around the world of Tartosa, and maybe even possibly some other worlds as well. Maybe they've like upped and moved from Tartosa and they've moved into like Oasis Springs, they've moved to Windenburg or whatnot. But either way, the wife comes from a very big family and they've lived in this world for the majority of their life. Now, despite them coming from a big family in terms of there's lots of different cousins and aunts and uncles and lots of different, you know, like there's a lot of different relatives in the Sims family tree. I imagined that their main household was a single parent household. I was personally imagining a single dad. Now, I was thinking that this single dad was also an owner of a wedding cake shop in the world of Tartosa, because if you're not aware, you can basically get your Sims to come to Tartosa and they can go and buy wedding cakes at like a little stall, I think it is. And so I was imagining that maybe this Sim, their parent, when they was growing up, owned a little wedding cake shop or a little cake store, one of the two, either or. It doesn't really matter too much, but they owned something to do with wedding cakes, and that was what they did for a living. Now, I was imagining, due to like kind of like lack of childcare and just kind of lack of people being able to look after them, they ended up spending a lot of time with their single dad. And so when they would go and open up the shop on like a Saturday or a Sunday morning, the kid, when they weren't at school, they would always go with them. They would spend the majority of their time with their dad. Like they probably didn't mind it, you know, but in terms of what they did in the weekends, they were just in and around this little family-owned wedding cake shop, and they probably had to find something to entertain themselves with. And so I then thought of the idea of, what about in this time when they were just, you know, sitting in the back room of this little cake shop, or just walking around the streets whilst their dad was at the cake stand serving all these customers, they had to find something to keep them busy. You know, I imagine this was in a time where, you know, social media, YouTube, Instagram, this wasn't really a thing. You know, you actually had to go outside and you actually had to, you know, that sounds bad, but, you know, it was something where iPhones wasn't really a thing. I imagine, by the way, that both of the Sims in this household are going to be adults, maybe now leaning towards possibly the elder life stage. So they're not young adults, they're just adults. But I was thinking that in their time when they were a kid, they needed something to distract them, something to keep them going throughout the day whilst their dad was at this cake stand or cake shop. And so in their spare time, they developed singing, just as kind of like a little bit of a hobby. And over time, and quite a quick time as well, I imagine that they got really good at singing really quickly. In Sims terms, I was thinking that they was able to get to level 10 of the singing skill in maybe like, I don't know, 6-7 weeks, something like that. They were just singing consistently because it's all really they had to entertain themselves with. Now, I imagine that this went on for years. You know, they would just sing maybe at like family gatherings, family parties. Maybe they would do like, if their cousin got married or something, they would maybe like put on a little show for them and sing for them, and they were just really good. And in their family, they were known as a singer. Now, eventually, once they got into their teenage years, they entered either like a talent show or maybe like a singing contest or something, and they actually went on to then finally win this show. And the show was something that was quite big. I was thinking maybe it was something like X Factor, or I don't know, The Voice or something that once you win it, it's kind of a little bit life-changing. So they won this show when they were probably like 16, 17 years old, and then all of a sudden they kind of got picked up from living in quite a, what I imagine to be a low-income household. Even though their dad owns, you know, like a little cake business and whatnot, I still imagine them to be quite a low-income household. You know, they're trying to make ends meet basically every single month, despite selling wedding cakes quite often. But I imagine that they were just picked up from their little corner of the world of Tartosa, and then they were just, I don't want to say thrown into show business, but they were kind of taken on all these different tours. They were singing in all these different venues, and they were just showcasing their talent basically, and they loved it. It was great because they were a teenager and they just get to basically sing for a living. They get to do their favourite thing, which kind of, it started off just being something that would pass the time when they were just waiting around when their dad was opening up the shop and serving customers, and it kind of became something that kind of consumed their life. But yeah, they were kind of picked up and then taken into show business, and then they ended up becoming a very famous musician, and everyone in the world of Tartosa knows of this sim. Everyone kind of looks up to this sim, and when they see any of their relatives in and around the world, even if it's just like their cousin, people will come up to them and ask them about this sim, you know, like ask them about what it's like knowing this big celebrity, because I imagine that the world of Tartosa in terms of the community is quite little, and if someone goes out into the world and they make a name for themselves, it's quite a big thing in this world. And so I imagine that was just kind of like the case for them. But I imagine that over time, from going from like a teenager to a young adult, they moved to the world of Delta Valley, where they lived for maybe like 6-7 years, something like that. Not too much of a long time, but they lived in a house on their own in the world of Delta Valley. And after a while, after they produced so many different albums and made it so many different performances and just kind of made a name for themselves, they never have to work again. They just kind of realised how lonely they was and how much they miss all of their family in the world of Tartosa. Now, in between this, at some point, I imagine that this sim then decided to take a trip to the world of Selva Dorada, which is the world that we got from the game pack The Sims 4 Jungle Adventure, and it is there where they met their now husband. Now, I was imagining that the initial intention for this trip was probably a little bit of a cleanse for them. I was thinking that where there's such a high profile celebrity, everywhere that they go, even if they're just popping to the shop, even if they're just popping, I don't know, to the dry cleaners, wherever they're going, they are just consistently being followed by paparazzi. They are always getting asked for their autograph. They're always being asked for a picture with them, and they love it and they really appreciate it because this is their fan base. You know, this is the people that kind of keep them going, has kind of helped them get to where they are. But after a while, it kind of started to take a little bit of a toll on them, because they were living in this really big house in Del Sol Valley, which I imagine was maybe like 6, 7, maybe even 8 bedrooms, a huge house, had everything that you could possibly imagine, you know, like basketball courts, a massive swimming pool, everything else I can't think of off the top of my head, but pretty much everything that you would want in a house they had. But they were just really lonely, and it was a really empty house because it had like 8 bedrooms, but there was only one sim living in there, because I imagine that once they had all this fame and all this money, their dad didn't want to take anything from them. Their dad was quiet. They just kind of wanted to stick to their little cake business. They still live in the same house. They didn't want to take any money from their daughter, and so they just carried on living their life as normal. Meanwhile, their daughter has gone off and got this really big luxurious house and has loads of friends which aren't actually her friends, but you know, they had this really big luxury life. And at the end of the day, they were just feeling a little bit lonely, and they were just a little bit sick of the consistent following from paparazzi, the consistent just fans following their every single move, that they probably took this trip to Selva Dorada as a little bit of a cleanse for them. You know, they wanted to go somewhere where they would be recognised, but not every single 5 minutes. You know, they'll be able to walk to the local bar and get themselves a drink, or they'll be able to go to the museum and have a little browse about without being swabbed by fans consistently. Now, I imagine that on this trip to Selva Dorada, you know, when you go to the world of Selva Dorada, you load into the bar, and you've got the bar as kind of like the lot, and then around it you've got them little market stalls. Well, I imagine that her husband was someone that was a vendor at this market stall. Now, in terms of how they met and kind of like a little bit more of their storyline as a couple, I imagine that the wife went to one of these market stalls and was looking to buy all the different stuff that you need to go and explore the temple, because you know the market stalls that I'm talking about that are in the world of Selva Dorada, some of them have like baskets, some of them have dolls, and then there's some that have like water bottles and loads of different like insect stuff to spray on insects in case you get like swarmed by spiders or something. I imagine the husband was just a seller of one of these market stalls. You know, they were a vendor, they were plopped opposite the bar. I imagine that their lifelong dream was to own a bar. Spoiler alert, they end up owning a bar, but I mean, you can't really do it in the game, but I imagine that they ended up owning a bar. But I imagine that they kind of initially met because this sim approached this market stall and they're a little bit clueless. But the thing is, her now husband had absolutely no idea who this sim was, and she really appreciated it, because I imagine, you know how I said that she had like fake friends or friends that weren't really her friends? I imagine that a lot of people around her that weren't from, you know, like her childhood or weren't from the world of Tartosa would often just use her for money, because they knew that they were this single sim, they had so much money, they had so much time on their hands, and so people will kind of just play about with that a little bit. And so she would have friends that would kind of use her for her money and who she is in terms of the public eye. But I imagine that when she went to this little market stall and she was looking for all these different like insect repellents and stuff like that to use when maybe she went and explored the temple, it was really refreshing, because she'd approached a sim that was around about the similar age to her, but this sim had absolutely no idea who she was. And it was really just, it was nice, because imagine that you've got all these people consistently following you, and then all of a sudden you meet someone who has absolutely no idea who you are, doesn't really treat you a certain way because of who you are in the public eye. It was really refreshing for her, and eventually she asked this vendor, who is now her husband, to come and explore the jungle with her, because she was a little bit worried about all the different insect sprays. You know, she didn't know how to use them, and she wanted a helping hand. And I imagine her husband probably offered it as well, probably saw that she was a little bit clueless. You know, it's this sim that has been in the world of Del Sol Valley for the past few years. They're probably not used to the jungle. They're probably not used to wearing like hiking boots and backpacks and, you know, like really short like explorer shorts, and, you know, just their general explorer's outfit was something that they were completely just brand new to. I imagine that they would normally wear maybe some high heels and often have like a little handbag that was probably designer, and now they're in the world of Selva Dorada, they're dressed in their proper explorer's outfit because they probably wanted to try and, you know, they wanted to go into the temple and they thought that they could do it themselves. And then they came across this vendor, probably saw how clueless that they was, and probably was actually a little bit concerned for their safety going into the jungle. Because if you've never played through the Sims 4 Jungle Adventure gameplay in terms of getting your sim to explore the jungle, sometimes insects will literally just come for you. Like, sometimes it'll be spiders. I'm pretty sure there's one that's bats. I think there might be a possible snake one. There's definitely a snake that comes out of one of the entrances, because I can picture it in my mind. I don't know if it follows you, but either way, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the jungle, and it can be quite dangerous. And so this vendor probably saw that and just, you know, was a little bit concerned for the sim's safety, and so they ended up going into the jungle together. Now, I imagine that during this trip to Selva Dorada, it was originally meant to be for like a week or something, but they had so much fun at just connecting with a sim that wasn't they wasn't bothered about this Sims social presence. No, they wasn't bothered about their social media fame on all of these different albums that they had. They just enjoyed being around this Sim for themselves, like their actual kind personality. And so they probably kept on extending their trip. I imagine that they probably had like a little tiny rental, and it was really small, really quaint, and they just kept on extending their stay, kept on extending, and eventually they asked this Sim, the Silver Dorado, or the husband, to come and visit them in the world of Del Sol Valley. And cut a long story short, eventually after a few months, possibly like even a year of dating, the Silver Dorado Sim, or the husband, then decided to move to Del Sol Valley with his, at that time, girlfriend. And then eventually, after living in Del Sol Valley for a few years, they both kind of come to the conclusion of what they wanted in life, and they both came to the conclusion that living in a really big populated city, like, even though it's not a city in the game, but Del Sol Valley is supposed to imitate, I think, Los Angeles, and so it's quite a built up area, I should say. They just realised that they didn't really want that, and they realised how much that the wife missed kind of like her childhood and being able to walk along the streets of Tartosa, be able to go to her dad's little cake shop, and she really missed them kind of core childhood memories, and she kind of wanted to not recreate them, but she wanted to move back to the world of Tartosa, and so that is exactly what they did. And eventually they got married. I imagine it was quite a quaint little wedding, you know, only small amount of people, very like immediate friends and family, no one, like no paparazzi. There was probably loads of magazines that were asking, you know, can I feature your wedding in a magazine? And she probably didn't want any of that. She made enough money from being a teenager and for singing for so many years. She had all of this money built up in a bank that she decided that she just wanted to live out the rest of her life in quite a secluded house in the world of Tartosa, and so that's exactly why this family lives here. Now, I love this backstory. I'm so happy with it. It's one of my favourite backstories that I've done in a while, and I really like it. So I hope you like it as well. But carrying on with a little bit more of the backstory for the husband. Also, by the way, I'm completely aware that I've now moved on into the inside, but I was thinking about this backstory for ages, and there's quite a lot of depth to it, as you can already tell. But I was thinking that with the husband, you know, I said that they had a market stall that is opposite the bar in Silver Dorado, kind of like the little square area. I was thinking that as maybe like a first or a third or some kind of like monument wedding anniversary, I was thinking that the wife then bought her husband a bar as kind of like a celebration anniversary gift. Now, I think I said it anyway, but I imagine that with this husband, he had years of working at this little market stall in Silver Dorado, was staring at a bar that was dead opposite, because when you go into the world, it's kind of like automatically placed. You know how now with like newer worlds that we're getting kind of like a lot, and then there's different activities that your Sims can do around it. The market stalls in Silver Dorado are kind of like the activities around the bar. But I imagine that this husband was staring at this bar for so many years, and he was thinking, you know, one day I'm gonna have my own bar, I'm gonna be able to just run my own little business. And his wife had kindly gifted them a bar for their anniversary, which is quite a nice present if you ask me. But like I said, this Sim's got a lot of money. She was years in the business of doing sold out albums, sold out tours, you know, she had quite a nice bank balance, and so she gifted her husband a bar as possibly a little bit of a thank you, because in their kind of relationship, he kind of brought her back down to earth. You know, she was in Del Sol Valley. She had this luxurious lifestyle, and her family was kind of not pushed aside, because I imagine that she's still very active in terms of she always goes to weddings and she always goes to her cousin's birthdays and something, even though when she arrives she'll often probably get paparazzi follow her. But I imagine that she was just so thankful that he kind of brought her back down to earth a little bit. And so where she'd already fulfilled her dream of being a record breaking, album making singer Sim person, basically, she decided to fulfill his dream and gift him a bar. Now, of course, unfortunately, in The Sims 4, this is not something that we can actually do, and so that's why you are seeing the wine cellar. Now, in The Sims 4, we have the Sims 4 Dine Out game pack, and there's this one decorational object, which I use quite often, to be honest, and it's these kind of like wine bottles. They're not interactive, they're just purely decoration, but I decided to merge them into the walls in the basement and kind of make it look like stacks of wine bottles. Now, where we can't make wine in The Sims 4, the next best thing, like I've said, is the juice making machine. You can see I've placed it into this room over here, and so instead of being able to make wine and sell wine, I thought, why not have it, this Sim, as kind of, not as a business, because they, to be honest, this household, they don't need any extra income, they've got enough of it, but it's kind of something that they really enjoy doing. They own a bar in the world of Tartosa, one of the bars that is probably going to be a community lot in my save file, but then kind of like on the side as a hobby, they make all these different kind of juices. I was more so thinking grape juice, because, you know, that is, wine is made from that. And so I was thinking that they could maybe have some grapes growing in their garden. They could harvest them. They can come down here and basically make the Sims version of wine, because you can't do that, but you know, they basically can make wine in their basement. And that was kind of like the backstory for this household, and I'm so happy with it. Like I said, I'm just so in love with this backstory, and like I've already said, it's one of my favourite ones that I've done in a really long time. And it's kind of refreshing to, in a way, do a backstory for a household that isn't just loads of different family members, because like I said, I don't often do houses that are just, you know, like a 1 bedroom 1 bathroom house. But for these Sims, and kind of hopefully now I've told you their backstory, hopefully it makes sense as to why it's such a small house. You know, they have all this money, they don't need to work another day in their lives, but they just want something that's quaint, something romantic, just for the two of them. And that is pretty much exactly what this house is, and I'm just so happy with it all, the backstory, the house, and just everything. So yeah, I hope you like it. But anyway, as you can see, we've already moved on, like I already said, because I've just been talking about this backstory because I'm just so in love with it. But you would have noticed, possibly, downstairs in the kitchen, you know how the dad is, you know, in the cake business, sells wedding cakes for a living. Hopefully you noticed that I tried to make it look like there was some like baking decorations on one of the kitchen counters. I wanted there to be little tiny nods to kind of like her childhood, and kind of like her family's original life. I say original lifestyle, but you know, where she came from. And so I imagine that sometimes her dad still maybe often pops over. Maybe he has like a little car, and he drives up all this like edge of the cliff, comes to her house in the secluded countryside of Tartosa, and maybe often they bake together still as kind of like a bonding activity. I don't imagine she leaves the house that often, because I imagine that whenever she does seem to leave her house, she's always, you know, followed by someone, or even if it's just like fans or whatever, she always feels like there's eyes watching her. So in terms of whenever she sees her family members, I imagine they're going to come to her, because it is such a secluded little house where this lot is placed. Because if you're curious, by the way, I always leave it in the top left corner. It's called Villa something. I can't read the rest of it. All I can make out from reading it on my screen right now is Villa, but it's a 30 by 20 at the top of kind of like a cliff in Tartosa. But yeah, I don't imagine she gets out much, and if anyone wants to come and see her, like friends or family or something, they will often come to her, just because she still has a little bit, she just still gets a bit worried about people following her consistently. And yeah, that's just basically the backstory for this household. But anyway, moving on and getting on what I'm actually doing right now. So as you can see, I've done pretty much the rest of the house. I just got really carried away with the backstory, so apologies for that one. But you can see that I've now moved on into the bedroom. Now for this house, it's 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. Easily, if you wanted it to be like a 2 or possibly even 3 bedroom house, it's quite easy to do so. So you've already seen me do the bathroom. If I was you and you wanted to have an extra bedroom, I would make the bathroom into a 2nd bedroom. And then you see the hallway area just outside the bedroom door, it's kind of got like a little side table and also quite a grand clock. If I was you, I would then make that into the bathroom, because there's enough space for it. And originally when I did the floor plan, you might have noticed that I did actually corner that little area off, because originally I was going to do it so what I've now ended up making into the bathroom was going to be kind of like a little guest space. But then I thought, to be honest, they'll have their friends and family come over, but it won't be a case of them needing to stay, because they all live in the world of Tartosa, or the majority of them do anyway. And so I just decided instead that I'd make it so what could have been a bedroom is just quite a large space for a bath. I say large space, it's quite a nice, it's a roomy bathroom. I mean, you can see I actually ended up like corner it off a little bit, just because sometimes when you're trying to do a bathroom and they're square, I find it really difficult. And so I added like a bit of a platform hidden behind a wall, just to kind of give it a little bit more shape. But I ended up making what could have been a guest bedroom into the bathroom, and then that hallway space, like I said, if you wanted to, you could definitely just corner it off and make it into a small little quaint bathroom. But now, as you can see, I've now moved on into the last space, which is kind of like the dressing room. Now I know she's moved back to Tartosa now. She's a little bit more humble, she's a little bit more back to her core values. But the woman's still got a lot of clothes. I imagine that she's still got quite a lot of, not designer stuff, but she's still got a lot of the clothes and the bags and the shoes that she's accumulated over time. And so I did decide to make her a little tiny dressing room. I don't have the wardrobe pieces that showcase the shoes and the clothes itself, just because they're quite modern, and I wanted this to feel a little bit, you know, a little bit Tuscan, a little bit Mediterranean, kind of like a mixture of both. And so I just decided to use a little dressing table, which is from Vintage Glamour, and then also a little chest of drawers, which is from Base Game. But I'm just going to go around this room, finish it off, add some final touches, and that is basically it. So anyway guys, as always, you can download this build via the gallery. My origin ID is JessicapieYT, or you can just search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedbuilding video. Bye guys!